Today I'm going to be answering some of the questions that you guys have asked and also frequently asked questions that I seem to get all the time. I don't claim to be an expert in any of this stuff, so I might not be giving you the proper advice or answers that you need or want, but I'll do the best that I can. So the first question is, Squid Paw Productions, does the ZV-1 have a base or native ISO? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. I know when you turn the ISO all the way down on the ZV-1 when you're shooting in 24 or 4K, you can get it down to 125. But I can see some grayed out ISOs 180, and I don't know how to activate those. So if somebody knows how to activate the 100 or the 80 ISO, then let us know in the comments. It can go as high as up to 12,800, although I highly recommend you never take it that high because your image really starts to fall apart. The highest that I would take it is 1,600, and even there, I would be careful. Roaring Peacock is up next with, do I have a discount code for the Ulanzi website? Peterson Fabrication asks if there's any other channels that I recommend that cover things like cameras and learning about all of this stuff. And the two channels that I consistently watch are Epic Light Media, I think that guy is hilarious, and also Peter Lindgren. And I think that both of those channels will really help you learn more about this craft if you want to become a master at it. Aspect Productions asks, how does one go from artistic to commercial? And I think the answer to that question is you just have to go out there and do some free videos. Don't do too many free videos because then you'll get the reputation that you do free videos, and then everybody will be hitting you up expecting or hoping that you'll do a free video for them. So just do a couple of them, get your name out there, post them to Facebook and YouTube, and let everybody that you know that you are a videographer. And then once that happens, the chips will all fall into place. But it does take time, so you have to have patience. Produce Cinema asks, what's the best picture profile on the A7 III? And I think if you've watched my channel for a while, you'll know my answer to this. It's Cine 2. The reason that I go with Cine 2 on the A7 III and the ZV-1 is because when you record both of those cameras together, like on an A camera interview and then you have a B cam, you cannot tell a difference. I've never been able to tell a difference when I'm in editing, that there's a difference between the two cameras. Now, if you don't use a picture profile at all and you shoot straight out of the A7 III and straight out of the ZV-1, there's a huge difference. You can tell that the ZV-1 is a worse off image. The colors don't look right, they look very unnatural. But once you lock in Cine 2 on both of those cameras and you custom set the picture profile, I'll leave the custom settings that I use for Cine 2 in the description. You cannot even tell a difference. So I go Cine 2 all day long. The color grading for Cine 2 is very minimal, but you get a really optimal picture. Z asks, Joe, how do you change the battery out on the ZV-1 when your ZV-1 is attached to the Crane M2, which is a gimbal? So I think I covered this in the camera bag video. And basically all I do is I set the Arca Swiss mount plate, you can get these for pretty cheap on Amazon, to the farthest hole on the outside of the cage of the ZV-1. And then you still can access the battery door and the SD card. And then I put the female side of the Arca Swiss plate on the gimbal, and then I put my ZV-1 on, and then I balance it out right. And then the good thing about doing it this way is you can easily just take your ZV-1 off and go handheld for a little bit and bring it back, put it right on your gimbal at the same exact spot, and you don't have to rebalance anything. Nur asks which video editing software I use. I use Final Cut Pro as my primary software, and then I also use After Effects for things like motion graphics and motion text. So if you guys want to see tutorials on how I edit, like screen share videos, just let me know in the comments below. IC asks if I could use an adjustable ND filter on the end of the ZV-1, and the answer is yes, but you have to go through some steps to get there. The first thing you need to do is get a step-up ring that will attach to the end of your lens. Usually you can get one of these on Amazon that just sticks to the end of the lens. If you get a Ulanzi wide-angle lens, it comes with it, but basically all it is it's a little metal step-up ring that attaches to the end of the ZV-1. So once you put that on the end of your lens, that happens to be a 55mm step-up ring, you have to get another step-up ring, which in my case, my ND filter is 67mm, and I use this on my bigger cameras. So now I have another step-up ring that goes from 55 to 67. So then I take this 55 to 67mm step-up ring, I screw it on to the Ulanzi step-up ring, and then I can put my adjustable ND filter on there. So that's how I get an adjustable ND filter on the end of my ZV-1. And it kind of looks cool too. Andy's asking a question about the DIY stabilizer that I created, if he could actually use the Ronin S to make that rig, and I think the answer is yes, but in that video I addressed the little problem of the quarter mount screw. The quarter mount to quarter mount screw is, in my opinion, it's too weak to put such a heavy piece of equipment like your Ronin S and whatever camera you're using, plus the lens, and even maybe like other accessories. For all of that weight to be on that little quarter mount screw, it's just kind of nerve-wracking. Pac-Man asked, how do I achieve that handheld effect even when my camera is on a tripod? And there is an effect in Final Cut Pro. All you have to do is just drag it in. When you first drag it in, it's a little bit too much of a shake. So I usually take it to the lower end and just give it a very subtle feel. But the reason why you would want to do this is because if you have a handheld effect, it makes it look like you have somebody filming you, which may be what you're going for, is like somebody's there filming you. You're not just out in the woods with a tripod talking to a camera. Greg's Vlog Show says, what? I really like the ZV-1. And he's referring to that video we put out with the ZV-1 radio. It was kind of like a satire video where we talked about the ZV-2 and how we didn't like the name ZV-1. Thanks, Todd. Let's go to our next caller out of New York. We have Anne-Marie.
I'd really appreciate it if Sony changed the name. ZV just isn't that cool.
Well, the thing is, I remember when the ZV-1 first came out, all I heard on my comments were like, why do they call it the ZV, and ZV is such a weird name, and why does Sony come up with all these weird names? So we were just playing off of that, and it's amazing how things evolve, and now everybody loves the ZV-1. Fantasy's asking if there's any ND filters for the ZV-1, and as far as I know, there's not. But the way that you can accomplish ND filters is by the way we talked about with the adjustable ND filter. Saya Kumar asked how would he be able to attach the ZV-1 to his bicycle? And the way that I would do that is I would get a clamp like this one. It's made by Small Rig. I'll leave the link to this one in the description. And I would just attach it to the handlebar or something, and then use a quarter mount to quarter mount screw, attach it to the ZV-1, and then adjust it to however you want the ZV-1 to be pointing, but please be careful. Aquapoint asks if I'm sponsored by Sony or if I'm just using the Sony ZV-1 because it's that good. And the answer is it's that good. Like I said before, the little ZV-1 can hold up right next to the A7 III. I know I'm gonna get tons of hate for that, but like we already talked about, anytime that I use both cameras at the same time, I've never had anybody tell me, oh, I can tell the difference in the image quality. And at the end of the day, we really just want to try to get a message across. And so a ZV-1 next to an A7 III, yes, the A7 III has better image quality, but the ZV-1 passes the test, and you would never know which one is which. You asks if after 6 months, do I still recommend the Crane M2? And I think it's probably been more like 10 months by now. But yes, I still recommend the Crane M2, especially for the ZV-1. And the reason why is because it's never broken on me, it's very reliable, and I've done some pretty crazy things with it, like putting it on a long pole and throwing it way high in the air. And then I've also used it on my phone and with an action camera. So I've used it for almost everything and anything that you can think of, and it hasn't broken on me, and it's still very sturdy and very reliable. So yes, I would still go out there and purchase the M2 if you have not yet. We have another gimbal question coming from John, who asks, do you have to remove most accessories from the ZV-1 in order to get it to balance on the Crane M2? So here's what I've been able to put on that gimbal without any malfunction. I've been able to put the ZV-1 inside of the cage with the Arca Swiss mount plate and the Ulanzi wide angle lens without any trouble. And I can actually freely fly through the air and you would never know the difference. Now, with that being said, I know it's probably not best for the motors because I'm probably exceeding the weight limit. And I also have to push the ZV-1 to the outer limits of both arms on the gimbal. And even when I do that, I'm still off of balance a little bit, like it's too heavy, but it's doable. As soon as I turn the gimbal on, it levels out. I'm able to go out there and get some really good shots. And I haven't had any malfunction with the gimbal yet, but I would not put any more accessories than that on the ZV-1 when you go on the M2 gimbal. Ladinane asks, how would I get a bird's eye view using the Sony ZV-1? When you say a bird's eye view, do you mean like really high up in the air? Because if you do, then what I would do is I'd put the ZV-1 on the gimbal on the end of a painter's pole, and then I would angle the ZV-1 however you want it, and then just throw it up into the air, and then you can get a nice wide angle landscape shot of whatever's in front of you. Jocelyn asks if I could do a review of the Olympus TG6, and I can't because I don't have one. And which underwater camera do I use and suggest? The only underwater camera I have is the Osmo Action, and it works really well. I'll show you some sample footage right now while I'm talking to you. It lasts a very long time, and as long as you're in clear water, then you'll get a really good picture out of it. I got a lot of these shots in 10 feet deep water, and I went down to the bottom and I didn't have any issues where water was leaking in through the case or anything like that. So I'm really happy with this underwater camera. Classy Alpha asked which case I recommend to store everything. If you haven't seen the camera bag video, that's where I store most of my grab and go type of stuff. And the other stuff I just leave on a shelf to get dusty until I need them. Art and Soul Creation asked what my IG handle is, and that is the Film Alliance. James asked which adapter I use to attach the mini handle to the top of the cage in the accessories video. And I believe that the handle actually came with the screw. You just screw it right in and then you use a screwdriver to tighten it down. So that's the attachment that I use to get the handle on the cage. Alan asks, which size polarizer can you use for the ZV-1? Anything bigger than 52 millimeters, because that's the size of the step-up ring that I was talking about earlier. Polonius asks if the wide angle lens impacts the background defocus feature. No, it does not. A Bunch on Disney asked which LUTs I'm using in post for color grading. I'm not using any LUTs at all. I just throw the color wheels on the screen, and then I throw my color graph next to the video clip, and I make sure that my highlights are just at about 100 and that my darks aren't going below 0. And Maximo asked if I would recommend the ZV-1 for real estate photography and videos. Yes, I think that that would be my primary camera if I only did real estate videos and photography, and mainly because it's so small, it's so compact. It has the Lanzi wide angle lens, so you can get those wide angle shots inside people's homes. People love to see their homes, especially when they look bigger than they actually are. And also the image quality is just really good. So that's it for now. I hope I answered all of your questions. If you have more questions, just leave it in the comments of this video, and then maybe every month or so I'll come back on here and I'll just throw out whatever knowledge I know. Sometimes it's not the right answer, sometimes it's not the best answer, but I'll just let you know what I know. Until the next video, I'm Joe with Film Alliance. Thanks for watching. Peace.